Good morning, students. Welcome to Best College Army classes. Today, we will go to discuss about various topics which we discussed in previous class already. Okay, but before going to discuss that, before going to start that, first of all, some doubts which the student asked, okay, regarding to human reproduction that we will discuss first. See, as we discussed in last class about the twins, how the twins will be formed, either monozygotic twins or dizygotic twins, how that are developed. So that we discussed in last class, right? There will be chances of the production of more than one ovum, right? But some students are asking that there is only 2 ovaries, but sometimes three children may born. See, in that conditions, the 2 ovaries may produce 3 ova. It is also possible. If one ovary will produce 2 ova, another ovary produce 1 ovum, so total 3 may possible. So there will be chances for the formation of 3 different zygotes, right? But along with that, one more chance also there in this odd numbers. For example, see, it is one zygote, it is another zygote. Both are developed from different ova and sperm, right? If cleavage will begin in this zygote, if these 2 blastomeres will be separated, then if it is not separated, then how many embryos will possible there? 3 embryos are possible. So these 2 embryos belongs to same gender. These are identical, but it is non-identical. It is also possible. It is also possible. At a time, there will be chances for the production of monozygotic twins along with the dizygotic twins that you should notice here. Is it clear? So if there is production of 2 dizygotes or 2 different zygotes, if one zygote after beginning of cleavage, after completion of first cleavage or second cleavage, if the blastomers are get separated, then that the blastomers may develop as independent embryos. So here we will get the odd number of twins. Okay, that you should notice here. Is it clear? So it is possible by the production of more than one ovum by each ovary at a time. Okay, or it is possible by the separation of blastomers after cleavage, right? So that is possibility. And if there is more than one embryos are implanted, what about the placenta formation? If there is 2 or 3 embryos are present or implanted in the uterus, then how many placenta will form? That is also a question from a student. So for every fetus, there will be formation of one placenta. A separate placenta and umbilical cord will form for every, for example, see, it is a uterus. Here, different embryos may implanted. See here. So like this, if there are 2 embryos, it is endometrium of uterus. Here, there is one placenta formed here, that is by involvement of the chorionic villi of this fetus and the endometrial tissue of uterus. After that, one more placenta formed from this. Okay, this is connected with the umbilical cord like this. So how many placenta will form in the case of twins? That is depends upon the number of embryos. Okay, so for each embryo or for each fetus, there is one placenta. Okay, so during the growth, these placenta may overlap. These placentas may overlap, but there is formation of separate placenta for each fetus. For each fetus, a separate placenta is present. Is it clear? For each fetus, a separate placenta will develop. That's right. But there may be chances for the overlapping during the growth of this placenta. There will be chances for the overlapping of placentas, but every fetus will form its own placenta along with the combination of endometrial tissue of the mother. So that you should notice here, right? Is it clear? So in last class, I gave you about the paternal twins or dizygotic twins or non-identical twins. And also we discussed about the monozygotic twins or identical twins and also siamese twins. All that we discussed in last class, right? See which type of cleavages are required for the development of monozygotic twins. Which type of cleavages are required for the formation of monozygotic twins, that is indeterminate cleavages. Very important, ma? Indeterminate cleavages. This type of indeterminate cleavages takes place in the embryos or in the zygote of higher group of animals. Whereas in lower group of animals, you will observe the cleavages are determinate cleavages. That is also in very primitive organisms. For example, in the case of Cnidaria and Ctenophora, which type of cleavages will notice? That are determinate cleavages. Indeterminate cleavages are the characters of higher group of animals. As already we discussed in first year, determinate cleavages will develop which type of embryos? Mosaic embryos. The embryos which are developed by determinate cleavages are mosaic embryos. And the embryos which are developed by indeterminate cleavages are known as regulative embryos. Is it right? So in first year, in the chapter Animal Kingdom, we discussed that regulative embryos and also mosaic embryos. So that is the completion of this chapter. Okay, human reproduction. Human reproduction is completed. Just once we should recall what we discussed. If any student, if you missed any topic, now I will brief about all the topics once. After that, we will go for next chapter. Okay. See, in this chapter, human reproduction, we discussed first about male reproductive system. Before starting the male reproductive system, we discussed about the reproductive events. You all know that human being is a sexually dimorphic, viviparous, and continuous breeding animal. In this human being, a sequence of processes or a series of events required to produce an offspring. Okay, to produce an offspring, the series of events or the sequence of events which are required are known as reproductive events. What are reproductive events? A series or a sequence of events which is required to produce an offspring is known as reproductive events. In human being and also in all other animals, which is the first step in the reproductive event, which is the first event in the reproductive events in the sequence of events, that is gametogenesis. After gametogenesis, insemination. After insemination, fertilization. After fertilization, implantation. After implantation, gestation, that is a pregnancy. After gestation, embryonic development, and after that, parturition, at last lactation. So all that sequences we discussed already. Especially in the case of gametogenesis, in the male and female human being, there is an important difference that also we discussed already. What is that? The gametogenesis in male is spermatogenesis and the gametogenesis in female is oogenesis, that you all know that. But what is the difference, main difference between the gametogenesis in male and gametogenesis in female? See, the male can produce the gametes throughout the life. Even in old age, the male can able to produce the spermatozoa. But the female cannot able to produce the ova after menopause. That is around the age of 50 years, the female cannot able to produce the ova. The menstruation will be, the menstrual cycle will be ceased or terminated around the age of 50 years, that is known as menopause. Okay. So that is the main difference between male and female in the reproductive events that you should notice. Right? And after that, we discussed about the male reproductive system. The male reproductive system is located in the pelvic region. This male reproductive system possesses primary sex organs or gonads, secondary sex organs or accessory sex organs, In these accessory sex organs, there are two types: accessory ducts and accessory glands, and there are external genitalia, which are essential for the copulation. So, in this male reproductive system, a pair of gonads, a pair of testes act as a primary sex organs or gonads that we discussed. These testes are mesodermal in origin, that are developed from which gem layer? That are developed from the mesoderm. Okay. See, in human being, the testes are extra-abdominal. The testes are extra-abdominal. Extra-abdominal testes is the character of human being. Why the testes are located outside the abdominal cavity and where that are located? That we discussed already. Where the testes are located in human being? In human being, the testes are located in dark pouch of skin that is known as scrotum. In the scrotum, there are two scrotal sacs. So, in each scrotal sac, one testis is located. Why the testes are accommodated outside the abdominal cavity? Because the developing spermatozoa cannot survive at a normal body temperature of a human being, that is 37 degrees centigrade. If once the spermatozoa are fully formed or fully matured, that can able to survive at 37 degrees centigrade. But developing stages, for example, the primary spermatocytes, the secondary spermatocytes, spermatid, all that cannot able to survive at high temperatures like a normal human body, that is 37 degrees. So it requires 2 to 2.5 degree lower temperature than normal body temperature. So scrotum will maintain 2 to 2.5 degree lower temperature than normal body temperature. Because of that, that are located in the scrotum that we discussed. How scrotum acts as a thermoregulatory organ, that also we discussed. Due to presence of which muscles? Dartos muscles. Dartos muscles act as a thermoregulators, okay, that will contract and relax in response to the changes of body temperature, okay, and also the changes in the surrounding temperature, that all we discussed. And we discussed about the gubernaculum, spermatic cord, which are required or which are essential to avoid or prevent the displacement of testes. And testes are actually developed in the abdominal cavity, but during the 7th month of embryonic development, these testes will descend into the scrotal sacs through inguinal canal. Inguinal canal. So, what is the connection between abdominal cavity and scrotal sacs? That is inguinal canal. That also we discussed already. Sometimes the testes cannot descend into the scrotal sacs even after birth. That is known as cryptarchidism. Cryptarchidism, which means abdominal testes. So this cryptarchidism should be corrected by a simple surgery known as archiopexy. Archiopexy. So that we discussed, right? So after completion of that, we discussed about the structure of testes. In human being, the testes are oval shaped. These are about 4 to 5 centimeters in length and 2 to 3 centimeters in width. Okay. So testes are pinkish in color, and these testes are covered by 3 membranes. What are that membranes? Tunica vaginalis, tunica albuginea, and tunica vasculosa are the 3 membranes that covers the human testes. In this, the tunica albuginea innervated into the testes and divides the testes into 250 compartments, which are known as testicular lobules. In each testicular lobule, 1 to 3 highly coiled seminiferous tubules are present. These seminiferous tubules are the structural and functional units of the testes. Is it clear? So all that already we discussed, right? So after that, in a human being, total of 500 testicular lobules are present. In each testicular lobule, 1 to 3 seminiferous tubules are there. So total, how many seminiferous tubules are possible? 500 to 1500 seminiferous tubules are present in both the testes. Okay, that you should notice. And after completion of that, we discussed about the structure of seminiferous tubule. The seminiferous tubule is internally lined by germinal epithelium. This germinal epithelium is containing 2 types of cells. The large cuboidal cells are known as male germ cells, and the long cylindrical cells are known as Sertoli cells. Male germ cells undergo meiotic divisions and produces the spermatozoa. After that, the Sertoli cells, which also known as sustentacular cells, are nerve cells that nourishes the developing spermatozoa, right? Along with that, Sertoli cell secretes androgen binding protein and inhibin. Androgen binding protein concentrates testosterone into the seminiferous tubules, which is essential for the spermatogenesis. Inhibin inhibits the secretion of FSH and also LH, okay, by anterior lobe of pituitary. That you should notice. After completion of that, in between the seminiferous tubules, there is a space which is known as interstitial space. In this interstitial space, the glandular cells or the secretory cells which are present are known as interstitial cells or cells of Leydig. Leydig cells are interstitial cells. What is the role of these Leydig cells in human reproductive system? The Leydig cells secretes the male androgen. The male androgens, the chief androgen is testosterone, that is secreted by the Leydig cells. That you should notice. And after completion of this, we discussed about the accessory sex organs or secondary sex organs. In that, first we discussed about accessory ducts. After that, we discussed about accessory glands. So, what are the accessory ducts that present in human male reproductive system? See, the accessory ducts here are rete testis, vasa efferentia, epididymis, vas deferens, ejaculatory duct, and urethra. Okay, that are the ducts which are arranged in a sequence. What is the use of these accessory ducts? The accessory ducts are essential for the transport of spermatozoa and also for the storage of spermatozoa, even that are involved in the nourishment of spermatozoa, but that cannot involve in the production of spermatozoa, so that are accessory, means additional. Okay, but which are the sites of production of gametes? That is gonads. That you should notice. Right after completion of that, first rete testis, where the rete testis is formed. See, by the fusion of seminiferous tubules in the mediastinum testis. What is mediastinum testis? A thick vertical septum which is formed by the tunica albuginea is known as mediastinum testis. In that mediastinum testis, by the fusion of seminiferous tubules at one end, rete testis will form. Rete testis is like a network of tubules. This rete testis receives the spermatozoa from the seminiferous tubules, and after that, the spermatozoa from rete testis will be received by vasa efferentia, vas efferens or vasa efferentia, which is also known as pectus efferentia. There are 10 to 12 vasa efferentia are there. That vasa efferentia are internally laid by ciliated epithelium, and this vasa efferentia receives the spermatozoa from rete testis and transport that spermatozoa into epididymis. And next, epididymis. Epididymis is the longest duct, accessory duct in male reproductive system. This epididymis is divided into three regions: caput epididymis, carpus epididymis, and cauda epididymis. The spermatozoa will store in the epididymis a maximum of 1 month or 30 to 35 days. It will be stored in the epididymis. While entering into the epididymis, the spermatozoa are immotile, but at the time of leaving the epididymis, that become motile. So, in the epididymis, the sperm will attain an ability to move. So, the motility of sperm will be attained in the epididymis, because the sperm will interact with the Caspar proteins. Caspar proteins, that also you should notice. So, which act as a storehouse of sperm or spermatozoa, that is nothing but epididymis. And cauda epididymis will opens into vasa deferens or vas differentia. So this vas deferens will ascend into the abdominal cavity, and that will coil around the ureter, and that will join with the duct of seminal vesicle and form as a ejaculatory duct. Okay. So this ejaculatory ducts from both sides will unite and form a common ejaculatory duct or ejaculatory ampulla. That ejaculatory ampulla will opens into urethra, right? That you should notice here. How the ejaculatory duct will form? By the fusion of vas deferens with the duct of seminal vesicle, ejaculatory ducts will form. There is formation of two ejaculatory ducts. Both are united and form a common ejaculatory duct or ejaculatory ampulla. That ampulla will opens into urethra. So that also you all know of that already. See, to avoid the production of children or to terminate or to stop the production of children by a person, the vas deferens should be cut and tied. This type of surgical operation in male, to avoid the production of children is known as vasectomy. Vas difference is cut and tied. So there is no chances for the transport of spermatozoa. The sperm cannot be released out. Because of that, there will be no chances for the production of child. That is known as vasectomy. Okay, right? That's clear. After completion of that, the next, urethra. Urethra is a common passage for both semen and urine. So urethra is known as urinogenital tract. Urinogenital tract in male human being. The urethra is divided into three regions. We all know that. The first one is prostatic urethra, second penile urethra, and second the longest part penile urethra. In between them there is membranous urethra. So prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and penile urethra. The longest part is the penile urethra, and it will opens out through urethral orifice or urethral meatus. So that you should notice here, right? After completion of that, accessory ducts, next accessory glands. Accessory glands are also not involved in the production of gametes, but these accessory glands are essential for the secretion of some fluids which will mixes with the spermatozoa that will form semen. Semen is nothing but spermatozoa plus the seminal plasma or the fluid which is secreted by the accessory glands, right? So these secretions of accessory glands are essential for the nourishment of spermatozoa outside the body, and also that are essential for the maintenance of pH, especially neutralizing the acidic pH in the vagina of the female, and also that will causes for reverse peristaltic movements in the cervix and vagina of female reproductive system, which will enhance the sperm receiving capacity of female reproductive tract. Okay, and also that is responsible for the clotting and declotting of semen also. That all already we discussed. What are the accessory glands that present in the male reproductive system? A pair of seminal vesicles, one prostate gland, a pair of vulvourethral glands or Cowper's glands are present, and they will secrete. Most of the seminal plasma is secreted by seminal vesicles, which is which is slightly alkaline in nature, and prostate after, and finally this vulvourethral glands. Okay, so what is the various components that are present in this secretions already we discussed. Okay, so fructose I gave. Fructose is present in the seminal plasma. It is present only in the seminal plasma of human body, but in female there is no fructose, right? So if there is identification of fructose in the female reproductive tract, what it indicates? It indicates insemination. Okay, that indicates insemination. So actually this examination of fructose in the female genital tract is an initial test during in the case of sexual assault or rape. Okay, right? Next, after completion of that, external genitalia in male reproductive system. What are the external genitalia that present in the male reproductive system? Penis and scrotum. As already we discussed of the scrotum, penis is a rod-like erectile copulatory organ. It is a rod-like erectile copulatory organ. In the case of human being, the penis is made up of 3 longitudinal masses of tissues, 2 corpora cavernosa and 1 corpus spongiosum. At posterior end or at terminal part, the corpus spongiosum will become swollen and appear like a bulb. Or this bulb-like structure, or this wide part of penis, which is formed from corpus spongiosum, is known as glans penis. This glans penis is covered by a loose fold of skin that is known as prepuce or a foreskin. Prepuce contain preputial glands or smegmatic glands. That preputial glands or smegmatic glands secrete the smegma. That smegma reduces the friction between foreskin and glans penis that we discussed already. Okay, the surgical removal of foreskin is known as circumcision. Okay, that also we discussed already, right? That is clear. So during a sexual stimulus, corpus spongiosum receives more blood and it will become erect. Okay, so whenever any sexual stimulus a person will get, more circulation of blood to the corpus spongiosum will be enhanced. Whenever more blood will be pumped to corpus spongiosum, then what will happen? Due to this hydrostatic pressure, the penis will be erected. To support this penis, there are 2 supporting tissues that are corpora cavernosa, which are located on dorsal side. Ventral side, corpus spongiosum, and dorsal side, corpora cavernosa is present. Crura muscles are present at the base of penis, that also will be discussed, which will relax during the erection of penis. Right? That is about the male reproductive system. Is it clear? Male reproductive system completed. And after completion of male reproductive system, we discuss about hormonal regulation of male reproductive system also. See, the male reproductive system is under the influence of hormones. Okay. The hormone level, especially in the case of human being, the hormone level, especially in the testosterone case. In the case of testosterone, if testosterone levels are less, automatically that will act as a positive feedback mechanism, or that will act as a stimulus for the hypothalamus. Then hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin releasing hormones. That gonadotropin releasing hormones will act on anterior lobe of pituitary. Then anterior lobe of pituitary secretes two hormones, FSH and LH. LH will act on Leydig cells or interstitial cells. Interstitial cells and stimulate the Leydig cells or interstitial cells to secrete testosterone. Because of that only, LH is also known as ICSH, interstitial cell stimulating hormone, right? So that you should notice. Testosterone levels will be increases, right? Along with that, FSH will act on the Sertoli cells and stimulates the Sertoli cells to secrete two hormones. One is androgen binding protein, another one is inhibin. So first there will be production of androgen binding protein. This androgen binding protein will bind with the testosterone and concentrates the testosterone in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. Then what will happen? Then spermatogenesis will be initiated in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. If there is no need of spermatogenesis, then the Sertoli cell secretes the inhibin. Inhibin inhibits the secretion of FSH. If there is no FSH, then there is no stimulus for the Sertoli cells to secrete the androgen binding protein. If there is no androgen binding protein, then the testosterone cannot be concentrated in the seminiferous tubules, so there will be no chances for the spermatogenesis. That you should notice. Maybe you all know that already we discussed very clearly about the functions of testosterone. Testosterone is male reproductive hormone or androgen, the chief androgen. Okay. And after that, testosterone is responsible for the development of secondary sexual characters in male after puberty. And along with that, testosterone is responsible for the development of secondary sex organs like accessory ducts and accessory glands. And testosterone is essential for the spermatogenesis. It stimulates the seminiferous tubules and especially the germ cells to undergo the meiotic divisions to form the spermatozoa. As already we discussed, in the case of male reproductive system, the accessory ducts are developed from the Wolffian ducts of mesonephrons. Wolffian ducts of mesonephrons. That's clear, right? That is about male reproductive system. After completion of male reproductive system, next we discuss about the female reproductive system. Like male reproductive system, in female reproductive system also there are three important type of structures. Primary sex organs are gonads. Secondary sex organs are accessory sex organs, and external genitalia. Right? What are the primary sex organs or gonads in female reproductive system? A pair of ovaries. So a pair of ovaries are located on either side of on either side of uterus in the pelvic region. A pair of ovaries are located. These ovaries are actually unshelled almond shaped. Okay. So this ovaries produce one ovum in every month alternatively after puberty. So after the age of 10 to 12 years in female, the ovaries will produce one ovum alternatively that will be produced, right? So the ovaries are externally covered by germinal epithelium, and below the germinal epithelium there is tunica albuginea, and inside there is a space which is known as ovarian stroma. Ovarian stroma is divided into outer cortex and inner medulla. See, outer cortex is granular due to presence of ovarian follicles which are at various stages of development. Right? That's clear about this. After completion of this, after completion of that, next, the ovaries are attached to dorsal body wall by mesovarium, and the ovaries are attached to pelvic wall and wall of uterus by ligaments. So that is about the ovaries, simple. And the growth of ovarian follicles will be discussed that in the part of oogenesis. We will discuss that later. Just remember about the ovaries. And after completion of this, the secondary sex organs here, first accessory ducts, a pair of fallopian tubes, a single uterus, cervix, vagina are present. Okay. Even we discussed about the hymen also, right? A pair of fallopian tubes are present. These are also known as oviducts. The oviduct in human being is about 15 to 20 centimeters, and this oviduct has three parts. The anterior are the part which is closest to the ovary is a funnel shaped structure that is known as infundibulum. After infundibulum, ampulla and isthmus are present. On the surface of infundibulum, finger-like projections are present, which are known as fimbriae. Okay, fimbriae. Next, fimbriae. And the widest part is ampulla, and narrowest part is isthmus. Ampulla is the site of fertilization. Ampulla is the site of fertilization. And uterus, we are all know that it is the site of implantation and embryonic development. The uterus in female human being is located in between rectum of large intestine and urinary bladder. In between rectum of large intestine and urinary bladder, this uterus is located. Uterus is actually inverted pear-shaped structure. Inverted pear-shaped elastic bag-like structure. Inverted pear-shaped elastic bag-like structure that is located in between rectum of large intestine and urinary bladder. In between them, it is located. And in human being, the uterus contains three parts: fundus, carna, and corpus. Fundus is anterior most part. It is a dome-shaped structure where actually the implantation should be expected. And carna is the part where the fallopian tubes will open into the uterus. And the corpus is the main part where the embryonic development, majority of the events in the embryonic development takes place. Right? That are the three parts inside the uterus. And the wall of uterus has three membranes: the outer perimetrium, middle myometrium, inner endometrium. Okay, the outermost protective layer is perimetrium. The middle myometrium, which is mainly made up of smooth muscles, and the largest smooth muscles in the body of a human can be noticed in this myometrium during the pregnancy. That also you should notice. And endometrium is the innermost layer where the implantation takes place, and it poses endometrial glands, or uterine glands. And this is a layer which will undergo cyclic changes during menstrual cycle. It will be degenerated and regenerated in the menstrual cycle. That you should notice. Right? After completion of that, the neck of uterus is known as cervix. Cervix has a cavity, that is cervical canal. Cervix has internal lobes and external lobes, that also we discussed. And vagina. Vagina is a tubular copulatory organ of female reproductive system. Internally, vagina has transverse folding which are known as vaginal rugae. This vaginal rugae will become soft after parturition, right? And the glycogen concentration will increases in the vagina after puberty. The thickness will be increases after puberty. So that you should notice it is a copulatory organ. And this copulatory organ is covered by partially perforated membrane, a thin partially perforated membrane that is known as hymen. Vagina is partially covered by a perforated or a partially perforated membrane, that is hymen, right? So during first coitus or first copulation or first sexual intercourse, this hymen will be ruptured, that leads to bleeding. But hymen may rupture during while playing some games like bicycling or horse riding or climbing or by sudden fall. Okay, so there may be chances for the rupture of hymen. Because of that, the presence or absence of hymen is not at all a reliable indicator of virginity. So that is also we discussed. After completion of that, accessory ducts, we discussed about the accessory glands. In the accessory glands in female reproductive system, a pair of greater vestibular glands or Bartholin's glands and a pair of lesser vestibular glands are Skin's glands are present. See, greater vestibular glands are present on either side of vaginal opening. There are one pair of greater vestibular glands. Okay, and numerous of lesser vestibular glands or skin glands are present around the urethral opening. See, mainly the secretions of greater vestibular glands, that is Bartholin's glands, are essential to maintain a required pH. That will maintain a particular pH, and also that helps in the neutralizing of acidic pH in the vagina at the time of copulation, right? And Skin's glands secretes the mucus. Okay. See, the Bartholin's glands of female reproductive system are homologous to bulbourethral glands of male reproductive system. Okay, that you should note this. Okay, right? And one more pair of accessory glands are present, that are mammary glands. These are mainly for the nourishment of the newborn in the mammalians. Mammary glands are actually modified sweat glands in the pectoralis major muscles of thoracic region. So mammary glands are modified sweat glands, and where that are located, that are attached to pectoralis major muscles of the thoracic region. In male human being, mammary glands are rudimentary or non-functional, but in female, these mammary glands will develop after puberty by the influence of estrogen hormone, right? The main components in the mammary glands are glandular epithelium, fat, and connective tissue. The glandular epithelium, which is present in each mammary gland, is divided into 15 to 20 mammary lobules. 15 to 20 mammary lobules. In each mammary lobule, there are clusters of cells. Clusters of cells which are known as alveoli. Alveoli are the sites of secretion of milk. Okay. And fat is responsible for the maintenance of a posture of the mammary glands. The quantity of fat will decide the structure and size of the mammary glands. And connective tissue covers mammary lobules around the in between mammary lobes. Okay, so there is a connective tissue, that is the interlobular connective tissue is present. Okay, so alveoli secretes the milk by the influence of prolactin hormone. This milk will be ejected out by the influence of oxytocin hormone. Okay, so prolactin is hormone responsible for the production of milk. Oxytocin is responsible for the ejection of milk. From the alveoli, how the milk will come out? What is the passage present in the mammary gland? That also you should notice. See, from each mammary gland, from each alveoli, there is arising of mammary tubules. These mammary tubules are fused to form mammary duct. The mammary ducts will again fuse and form mammary ampulla. So from each lobe there is formation of one mammary ampulla. So 15 to 20 mammary ampullas will form. 15 to 20 mammary ampullas. That mammary ampullas will open into lactiferous ducts. So each mammary ampulla will open into one lactiferous duct. So lactiferous duct will opens out through the nipple. When the baby will start sucking the nipple, that acts as a stimulus for the production of milk. Okay. After parturition only this will take place, because after parturition only the prolactin levels will reach into sufficient levels in the body of a female. Right? Around the nipple, the apex of the mammary gland is known as nipple. Around the nipple, there is a dark pigmented skin is present, that is known as areola. In the areola, there are areolar glands are present. This areolar gland secretes some oily substances which act as a lubricants and reduces the friction on the nipple at the time of sucking of nipple by the baby during lactation. There is a nourishment. Okay, so during the nourishment of the baby, it reduces the friction on the nipple. So that is about accessory ducts and accessory glands in female reproductive system. Is it clear? And after completion of accessory glands, the external genitalia in female reproductive system. The external genitalia of female reproductive system is known as vulva or pudendum. So, what are the structures that included in this vulva or pudendum? There is mons pubis, a pair of labia majora, a pair of labia minora, clitoris, and hymen. Already we discussed about the hymen. What is mons pubis? Mons pubis, a cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and pubic hair. A cushion of fatty tissue covered by skin and pubic hair is known as mons pubis. Actually, mons pubis is a support arranged as a supportive structure of pubic symphysis. It is, for example, it is a pubic symphysis joint of pelvic girdle. On the surface of this, which is there, that is mons pubis. So during the parturition, when the pubic symphysis may widen, so pubic symphysis will relaxes by the action of relaxin. It will be loosened by the action of relaxin hormone. Already we discussed that. So pubic symphysis, whenever it will be loosened, automatically this mons pubis may act as a cushion, that will support for this pubic symphysis joint during the parturition. And labia majora are a pair of large fleshy folds of skin that possess modified sebaceous glands. This will form the border of pudendum, lateral border of pudendum or vulva is formed by labia majora. Inside the labia majora, a pair of small fleshy folds of skin are there, that is known as labia minora. In between two labia minora, there is a space which is known as vestibule. In female human being, the vestibule has two openings. One is urethral opening, another one is vaginal opening, right? So the opening which is located at the anterior side is urethral opening. At posterior end is vaginal opening. So there are two openings. There are two openings in the vestibule. The two openings in the vestibule are urethral opening and vaginal opening. So there is no connection between excretory system and reproductive system. There is no common passage in female reproductive system. Because of that, female reproductive system is not at all considered as a urinogenital tract. That's clear. Is it clear? Right. So after that, so there is no common passage here. And clitoris is a tiny finger-like structure which is erectile in nature. It is actually homologous to glans penis of the male. So the clitoris of female reproductive system is homologous to glans penis of the male reproductive system. The labia majora of female reproductive system is homologous to scrotum of the male reproductive system. The labia minora is homologous to membranous urethra. Sorry, labia minora is homologous to. Once again, sorry for the disturbance. Right? Labia majora, scrotum, labia minora, penile urethra, and if you see the vestibule, it is homologous to membranous urethra, and bulbourethral glands are homologous to Bartholin's glands, right? So that all are clear in the female reproductive system, right? After completion of male and female reproductive system, we discussed about the gametogenesis, male gametogenesis and female gametogenesis. Both we discussed. What we discussed in male gametogenesis and female gametogenesis. First of all, the spermatogenesis. So the process of production of spermatozoa in the seminiferous tubules of the testes in male after puberty is known as spermatogenesis. How the spermatogenesis will begin, that you have to know, right? For this, androgen binding protein should be bind with the testosterone, then the testosterone will be concentrated in the seminiferous tubules. Whenever testosterone will be concentrated in the seminiferous tubules, the male germ cells or primordial germ cells will begin the spermatogenesis. In the spermatogenesis, there are three phases now. What are the three phases of spermatogenesis? First phase is multiplication phase, growth phase, and maturation phase. So in first phase, multiplication phase, the primordial germ cells which are diploid in nature and possess 46 chromosomes undergo repeated mitotic divisions that leads to formation of more number of spermatogonia or sperm mother cells, right? This spermatogonia will grow in size and modifies into primary spermatocyte. This primary spermatocyte will begin maturation divisions, or it will undergo meiosis. So primary spermatocyte will undergo meiosis 1 that leads to formation of two secondary spermatocytes which are first haploid cells in the spermatogenesis. Again, these two secondary spermatocytes will undergo meiosis 2, which is equational division, that leads to formation of 4 haploid spermatids. Spermatids will undergo metamorphosis and modifies into sperm. The modification of immotile non-functional spermatid into motile and functional spermatozoa is known as spermiogenesis or spermatogenesis. Spermiogenesis or spermatogenesis that we discussed. So here there are total 6 stages I gave. In that 6 stages, primordial gem cells, spermatogonia, and primary spermatocytes are diploid that possess 46 chromosomes. But secondary spermatocytes, spermatid and spermatozoa are haploid cells here. And one primary spermatocyte will produce 4 sperms. One secondary spermatocyte will produce 2 sperms. One spermatid will produce only 1 sperm. So that all already discussed. And also here, after formation, the sperm, the head of sperm is embedded into the Sertoli cells to get the nourishment. So the release of sperm or the release of head of sperm from the Sertoli cells is known as spermiation. Okay. So spermateleiosis or spermiogenesis, the transformation of immotile non-functional spermatid into motile and functional sperm is known as spermiogenesis. Spermiation, the release of head of sperm from the Sertoli cell is known as spermiation. So the definitions you should remember. And also various problems also we discussed. To produce 2000 sperm or spermatozoa, how many primary spermatocytes are required? So one primary spermatocyte will produce 4 sperms. So 2000 by 4, that is 500 is required. So like that some problems they will ask, that also we discussed here. 3 pages: multiplication, growth, and maturation. In multiplication, mitotic divisions; maturation, meiotic divisions. So multiplication divisions are nothing but mitotic divisions. Maturation divisions are nothing but meiotic divisions. That is spermatogenesis. When compared with spermatogenesis, oogenesis is most complex, right? In the spermatogenesis, after completion of multiplication phase, spermatogonia will form. There are 2 types of spermatogonia produced, type A and type B. Type B only undergo meiotic divisions to produce the sperm. Type A act as a stem cells that will always maintain the number of spermatogonia in the testes. Because of that only, the male can able to produce the spermatozoa even in old age. Up to death, the male can able to produce the spermatozoa because of this type A spermatogonia. That also you have to remember. Next, oogenesis, the most complex process when compared with spermatogenesis. Spermatogenesis will begin only after puberty, but oogenesis will begin in the fetal life. During 7th month of fetal life of a female, the oogenesis will begin. In the 7th month of fetal life, so that means in the uterus of mother only, the oogenesis will begin in the fetus. But it will be completed only after puberty. Okay. So here also 3 phases are there: multiplication phase, growth phase, maturation phase. In the multiplication phase, the ovary is externally covered by germinal epithelium. The cells of this germinal epithelium will undergo repeated mitotic divisions and produce a couple of million of oogonia in each ovary. 2 million of oogonia in each ovary. Okay. This oogonia later enters into the stroma of ovary in the form of egg tube of Lugger. After entry into the stroma, this egg tube of Lugger will modify into egg nest. In each egg nest, only one oogonium will grow in size and modifies into primary oocyte. This primary oocyte will begin meiosis 1, but that meiosis 1 is temporarily arrested in diplotin phase of prophase 1. Diplotin phase of prophase 1, it is the first resting phase. It is because of insufficient levels of estrogen. Okay. So during this phase, the remaining cells of egg nest will modify into a flat cell layer around the primary oocyte. Now this is follicular epithelium. So the oocyte along with the follicular epithelium is known as primordial follicle. Later this flat cells will become cuboidal, that are known as granulosa cells. Whenever the primary oocyte is covered by a single layer of granulosa cells, that follicle is known as primary follicle. Again, This unicellular membrana granulosa will modify into multi-layered membrana granulosa that will create a pressure on the stromal tissue which is present around this, that leads to condensation of stromal tissue. So due to condensation of stromal tissue, there is formation of two theca layers, theca interna and theca externa. So the oocyte with the membrana granulosa, theca interna, theca externa is known as secondary follicle. Okay, so this is secondary follicle where the oocyte is surrounded by three layers: membrana granulosa, theca interna, theca externa. Theca interna starts secretion of estrogen. Because of this estrogen, the secondary oocyte, sorry, the primary oocyte, which already begin the meiosis 1, but it is arrested in the diploiding phase of prophase 1 of meiosis 1, will start, it will restart the meiosis and it will complete meiosis 1 in tertiary follicle. What is tertiary follicle? After formation of a secondary follicle, the membrana granulosa, which is a multi-layered, will split into two: the internal corona radiata and external membrana granulosa. That leads to formation of a cavity. That cavity will be filled with the fluid secreted with the follicular cells. That is known as antrum. So there is formation of antrum. Antrum is a fluid-filled cavity. So the presence of antrum is the characteristic feature of which follicle? Tertiary follicle. So in the tertiary follicle, the primary oocyte complete meiosis 1. Meiosis 1. That leads to formation of two unequal cells. One small first polar body and a large secondary oocyte. This secondary oocyte will modify into oocyte and finally ovum. Okay. This ovum will modify into zygote. So during initial days of embryonic development, this cytoplasm which is retained more in the secondary oocyte helps as a food. That is actually food for the embryo in early embryonic stages. Because of that, most of the cytoplasm will enter into the secondary oocyte and very less into the first polar body. Because first polar body cannot play any role in the formation of ovum. It is only to convert a diploid cell into a haploid cell. To convert a diploid primary oocyte into a haploid secondary oocyte to share the chromosomes only, there is formation of first polar body. So again, in this tertiary follicle, secondary oocyte will begin meiosis 2, but it is also arrested in metaphase by releasing of metaphase promoting factor. Later, the tertiary follicle will grow in size and modifies into mature follicular Graafian follicle. This Graafian follicle will move towards the surface of ovary and that will rupture the surface membrane of the ovary. Later, whenever the LH concentrations are high in the body, all the membranes which are present around the oocyte will be ruptured except zona pellucida and corona radiata. Then the secondary oocyte will release into the body cavity, which is known as ovulation. So LH is the ovulatory hormone that is responsible for the release of secondary oocyte into the body cavity in human being. But what is ovulation actually? The release of ovum into the body cavity from the Graafian follicle. But in human being, the secondary oocyte will release into the body cavity that you should notice. Is it clear? Right? And also the layering, how the layers are arranged. After formation of secondary oocyte itself secretes a protective layer around it, that is zona pellucida. So from inside to outside, zona pellucida, corona radiata, membrana granulosa, theca interna and theca externa are present. From the tertiary follicle, there is an antrum also present. Cumulus oophoricus. Cumulus oophoricus are the granulosa cells, granulosa cells that elevated from the membrana granulosa to corona radiata and that form a connection between membrana granulosa and corona radiata. Right? After ovulation, after releasing of secondary oocyte, the ruptured Graafian follicle will filled with the blood clot, which is known as corpus hemorrhagium. Later, it will be filled with a yellow color substance, that is a lutein, and it appears like a yellow color body, which is known as corpus luteum. Corpus luteum acts as a temporary endocrine gland. This corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Progesterone is essential for maintenance of endometrium during the pregnancy. Because of that, it is known as pregnancy hormone. If there is no fertilization, corpus luteum will be degenerated and it will appear in a white color, mole or white color sphere, that is known as corpus albicans. Right? So, if fertilization takes place, corpus luteum remains throughout the pregnancy and it secretes the progesterone. If progesterone is there, endometrium cannot be degenerated. So, absence of menstruation may be an indication of pregnancy. So, that is about corpus luteum, corpus hemoraceum, and corpus albicans, right? So oogenesis also completed. Here in the oogenesis, secondary oocyte only release, but there is no formation of ovum takes place. Whenever secondary oocyte will release into the body cavity, the fimbriae of infundibulum will correct the secondary oocyte, and this secondary oocyte will reach to ampulla. Whenever a sperm will come in contact with the secondary oocyte, then only the secondary oocyte will complete meiosis 2. Okay. So if a sperm will come in contact with the secondary oocyte, the metaphase promoting factor will be breakdown or that will be degenerated. Then anaphase promoting factor will be produced. Whenever anaphase promoting factor will be produced, automatically this secondary oocyte will complete meiosis 2. That leads to formation of two unequal cells again, that is second polar body and large oocyte. Oocyte will undergo some modifications, metamorphosis, and finally modifies into ovum, right? So that's clear. Ovum will be produced here, right? Along with ovum, which layers are present? Zona pellucida and corona radiata are present. So that is the gametogenesis. One thing you should remember in the gametogenesis, one primary oocyte will produce 3 polar bodies and 1 ovum only. So to produce 100 ova, 100 primary oocytes are required, right? Number of ova is equals to number of primary oocytes, but there in the spermatogenesis, one primary spermatocyte will produce 4, 1:4 there, but here 1:1. That you should notice here. In the spermatogenesis, maturation phase is the longest phase. In the oogenesis, growth phase is the longest phase. Spermatogenesis may completed within 65 to 70 days of time, but oogenesis required 10 to 12 years because it began in the fetal life, but the production of first ovum takes place after puberty, that is 10 to 12 years, right? Growth phase is the longest phase, and the first menstruation is known as menarche. The last menstruation is known as menopause. In between this menarche and menopause, one ovum will be produced, that is secondary oocyte. If there is no fertilization, if there is no insemination, it is only secondary oocyte. Okay, so one secondary oocyte will be produced by the two ovaries alternatively in a very menstrual cycle. So up to that, gametogenesis is completed. So after completion of gametogenesis, we discussed about structure of gametes, structure of sperm and structure of ovum. We'll continue this recalling of all the completed topics after a short break. Is it clear? Is it useful to you? If any students, due to any reason, if missed any class, if you follow this, all your doubts will be clear. Okay. So we'll continue this discussion after a short break. Welcome back, students. See, after completion of gametogenesis, the next topic we discussed in this chapter, that is human reproduction, is structure of gametes, structure of male and female gametes. In that, structure of male gamete, there is a sperm, and structure of ovum, both we discussed. See, the male gamete sperm is a long, it has a long or a cylindrical body. The sperm of human being is divided into 4 parts. The anterior-most widest part is the head, and a short neck, middle piece, and a long tail is present. So the sperm of human being has 4 parts: head, neck, middle piece, and a tail, right? So the human sperm can able to survive the human sperm can able to survive a maximum of 24 to 48 hours in female genital tract. Okay, right? In this, the anterior most part is head. The head contains 2 important structures: a large nucleus. Most of the region in the head is occupied by the nucleus. This nucleus contains haploid set of chromosomes and a cap-like structure, that is acrosome. Okay. So acrosome is essential for the breakdown of barriers which are present around the oocyte. To break down the zona pellucida and corona radiata, the hydrolytic and proteolytic enzymes which are present in the acrosome are essential. Okay, that we discussed in the acrosome reaction that we should notice here. Right after completion of that, middle piece, sorry, neck. In the neck is the shortest part. In the neck, there are two centrioles, proximal centriole and distal centriole. Proximal centriole play an important role in the first cleavage of the zygote, and distal centriole act as a basal body for the formation of axial plasmid. Distal body act as distal centriole act as a basal body. In the middle piece, the mitochondria is in the form of a spiral sheet around the axial filament. So around the axial filament, the mitochondria arranged in the form of spiral, that is mitochondrial spiral, which is also known as Nebenthal sheet. It is the source of energy for the sperm. It is storehouse of energy for the sperm. At last, the tail contains axial filament. The tail has two regions, main piece and end piece. In the main piece, along with the axial filament, the plasma membrane and cytoplasm is there. In end piece only, the axial filament is there. This axial filament will show 9+2 arrangement of microfilament arrangement, which is present in the flagellum and also in cilia. So it is similar to flagellum. It is a structure which is essential for the motility, which play a vital role. That is the main reason, or that is the main source for the motility of the sperm. That is the tail. Okay, that I have to remember about the structure of human sperm. Okay. See, in a single ejaculation, 200 to 300 millions of spermatozoa will be released into female genital tract. In this, at least 60% required normal size and shape. At least 40% required vigorous motility. Okay, the sperm can move 1.5 to 3 millimeters per minute in the female genital tract. This vigorous motility of a sperm that you should notice, right? Normally, the semen is a mixture of spermatozoa and seminal plasma. It is alkaline in nature, and usually in a single ejaculation, 3 to 4 ml of semen will be released into female genital tract. In each ml, how many spermatozoa are there? 20 to 120 millions. 20 to 120 millions are there. If there is any disturbance in this normal count, size, or structure, there are some disorders we discussed already: azoospermia, oligospermia, asthenospermia, teratospermia. That are all some disorders. Okay, some disturbances in normal production, or normal count, or normal motility, or normal size and shape of the sperm. And after that, ovum, the largest cell in the body of human being is ovum. It is about 0.1 centimeters in diameter, and this ovum contains cytoplasm, which is known as ooplasm, and the plasma membrane of ovum is known as oolemma. Right? See, the nucleus of ovum, which is in the form of vesicle, is known as germinal vesicle. Germinal vesicle. See, in the ovum, the cytoplasmic concentration and also the quantity of cell organelles are more. Especially three cell organelles, Golgi bodies, endoplasmic reticulum, and mitochondria are high in concentration. And these three cell organelles will form, that will arrange in the form of a ring around the nucleus, which is known as Balbiani-Whiteley ring. Balbiani-Whiteley ring. Right? After that, the Golgi bodies will secrete a membrane around the plasma membrane, which is known as Whiteley membrane. In human being, Whiteley membrane is completely fused with the plasma membrane, so we cannot notice plasma membrane separately around the ovum. So we can consider that as a Whiteley membrane only. And these Golgi bodies will form cortical granules in the cortex region of the ovum, that is the peripheral region of the ovum, right? And the space which is present between Whiteley membrane and zona pellucida is known as perivitelline space. Okay. So in the eggs, there are two poles, animal pole and a vegetal pole. How to notice this animal pole and vegetal pole? If there is more yolk accumulated in one end, that is the vegetal pole, where more cytoplasm is present or very less yolk is present, or no yolk is present, that is the animal pole. Animal pole. The polar bodies will be actually pushed towards the animal pole. From the animal pole, there will be formation of a fertilization cone through which the sperm will enter into the ovum. That we have to notice here. Is it clear? Right? And the process of formation of yolk in the eggs is known as vitellogenesis. Vitellogenesis takes place mainly in the liver. Egg can able to secrete its yolk, but very little in quantities. But most of the yolk is secreted in the liver and that will be transferred. Okay, so that will transfer to the eggs, which is the major organ for the vitellogenesis, that is the liver. Right? The composition of yolk already we discussed, which is the main component in the yolk, that is lecithin protein. Lecithin is yellow in color, so yolk is yellow in color. Lecithin is the major component in the yolk. That also you have to remember. And human egg is which type of egg? As already I gave you, human egg is alecythal, homolecithal, non-cleidoic egg. Alecythal, homolecithal, non-cleidoic egg. And after that we discussed about the classification eggs. Based on the quantity or amount of yolk, the eggs are classified into alecythal eggs, microlecithal eggs, mesolecithal eggs, and megalecithal eggs, 4 types. And based on the distribution of yolk, the eggs are classified into homolecithal or isolecithal and heterolecithal, 2 types. Heterolecithal are further classified based on the location of yolk, that are telolecithal eggs, centrolecithal eggs, and discoidal eggs. And based on the presence or absence of shell, the eggs are classified into 2 types, cleidoic and non-cleidoic eggs. The study of eggs is known as woolology. The study of eggs is known as woolology. So that is about gametes, right? Next, after completion of these gametes, what is the next topic we discussed? That is reproductive cycle in primates and non-primates. Both we discussed. The reproductive cycle in female primates is known as menstrual cycle. So it is a complex rhythm or a complex rhythmic action that takes place in the reproductive system of a female primate. Okay, menstrual cycle is nothing but a complex series of rhythmic actions that takes place in the endometrium and also in ovary. That is a female reproductive system of a female. See, in the menstrual cycle of female human being, 4 hormones play an important role. 2 are ovarian hormones and 2 are hormones of pituitary, anterior lobe of pituitary. The ovarian hormones are estrogen and progesterone, and pituitary hormones are FSH and LH. And there are 4 phases in the menstrual cycle. The first phase is menstruation phase or bleeding phase or menses. The second phase is follicular phase or proliferative phase or pre-ovulatory phase or estrogenic phase. The third phase is ovulatory phase, and last phase is secretory phase or luteal phase or post-ovulatory phase or progesterogenic phase. See, whenever there is sudden drop in the levels of hormones, especially the level of progesterone in the body, endometrium will be degenerated. All these degenerated parts of endometrium along with the cell debris and the damaged capillaries and unfertilized ovum all will be sent out through the vagina in the form of menstrual flow. So that will last in 3 to 5 days. In first 3 to 5 days of menstrual cycle, that is first phase, menstrual phase. All hormone levels are very less. So whenever hormone levels are less, that act as a positive feedback mechanism on the hypothalamus. Then hypothalamus secretes the gonadotropin releasing hormones. Then gonadotropin releasing hormones will act on anterior lobe of pituitary that will stimulate the pituitary to secrete FSH and LH. So in second phase, FSH and LH level will be increases. FSH will act on ovarian follicles of the ovaries and stimulates the growth of ovarian follicles and leads to formation of Graafian follicle. Because of that, this second phase is known as follicular phase, right? And LH, which is present here, that will initiate or that will stimulate the degenerated part of endometrium. That is stratum functional is degenerated, but stratum basal is permanent. Okay, so it will stimulate the mitotic divisions in the stratum basal. Stratum functional is degenerated. Whenever stratum basal will begin mitotic divisions, that leads to reformation of stratum functional again. But it will be continuous, or it will be enhances, or it will be provoked by the estrogen. Estrogen is secreted by the developing follicles. So in the second phase, follicular phase or proliferative phase, 3 hormone levels will increase: FSH, LH, and estrogen. and two simultaneous events takes place in two different organs of the reproductive system. One is regeneration of endometrium in the uterus, another one is growth of ovarian follicles and formation of Graafian follicle in the ovaries. So that is about the second phase. By the middle of the cycle, by 14th day, see, second phase takes place in between 6th to 13 days, 6th to 13th day of menstrual cycle, and after that, at the middle of the cycle, that is 14th day, LH levels will reach to maximum, which is known as LH surge. That leads to rupture of Graafian follicle. Okay, that leads to release of secondary oocyte into the body cavity. That is ovulation. So LH is ovulatory hormone. So whenever hormone levels are high in the body, that acts as a negative feedback mechanism. Then what will happen? In next phase, FSH, LH, and estrogen, FSH, LH levels will be reduced. Whenever there is negative feedback mechanism, hypothalamus cannot secrete gonadotropin releasing hormones. Then gonadotropin hormone releasing hormones are not there. Then what will happen? Pituitary cannot secrete FSH and LH. So FSH and reduced in the body. Along with that, due to rupture of Graafian follicle, theca intern also not there to secrete the estrogen. So estrogen levels also reduces. So in fourth phase, three hormone levels will be reduces: FSH, LH, and also estrogen. But ruptured Graafian follicle will modify into corpus luteum, which secretes the progesterone. Okay, right? So the ruptured Graafian follicle will modify into a temporary yellow color endocrine gland, that is corpus luteum. Corpus luteum starts secretion of progesterone. This progesterone will stimulate the uterine glands to secrete nutritive fluids in the uterus. So all secretions takes place in this phase. Because of that, it is secretory phase. Secretory phase or luteal phase, due to formation of corpus luteum. It is luteal phase. It is post-ovulatory. It takes place after ovulation. Or it is progesterogenic phase, due to increase in the levels of progesterone. It is the longest phase. It takes place between 15th to last day of menstrual cycle. If fertilization takes place, corpus luteum will maintain throughout the pregnancy. So there will be no degeneration of endometrium. Menstrual cycle cannot be takes place during the pregnancy. If fertilization cannot take place, corpus luteum will be degenerated and corpus albicans will form. Then progesterone level will suddenly drop. Again, that will causes for the degeneration of endometrium. A new menstrual cycle will begin. Okay. So that is about menstrual cycle in female human being. Okay. This is the reproductive cycle in all female primates. Right. After that, estrous cycle is the reproductive cycle in non-primates. It has two phases, estrous phase and anestrous phase. These are seasonal breeders, so fertilization or copulation or ovulation is not required throughout the year. So gametogenesis, copulation, and fertilization required only in a certain season. So there is two phases here: estrous phase and anestrous phase. During estrous phase only, the female allow male for the copulation, and ovulation takes place during that phase only. Fertilization takes place in that phase only. If fertilization cannot take place, endometrium will be degenerated, but that degenerated parts of endometrium cannot be sent as a menstrual flow or estrous flow. That will be absorbed by the reproductive tract of female itself. So after completion of estrous phase, anestrous phase. In anestrous phase, the female cannot allow the male for the copulation. There is no ovulation. Ovulation is temporarily arrested in this phase, right? That are the estrous cycle. So that is completion of menstrual cycle and estrous cycle. After completion of that, what is the topic we discuss? So human reproduction, male reproductive system completed, female reproductive system completed, gametogenesis completed, structure of gametes completed. After that, menstrual cycle is completed. After completion of this, the fertilization and implantation. The next topic is fertilization and implantation. So what is fertilization and where the fertilization takes place? What are the sequential events that are required in the fertilization? See, in that I gave you 4 sequential events. Approach of gametes or attraction of gametes. Approach of gametes or attraction of gametes. Acrosome reaction, cortical reaction, amphimixis. See, the gametes which are produced in the in the gonads of 2 different animals have to meet for its fusion. So for that, the first required process is copulation or coitus. So coitus or copulation is the physical intercourse or physical interaction between male and female, during which the male releases the spermatozoa into female genital tract. So after releasing of spermatozoa into female genital tract by this copulation or coitus, the spermatozoa will attain a capacity to reach the ovum, that is known as capacitation. So during capacitation, the cholesterol membrane which is present on acrosome will be dissolved. Then the receptors will be exposed. These receptors will receive the signals from the ovum. With the help of these signals or with the help of this message, the sperm can able to identify the address of the ovum or location of the ovum where it is present, either in left fallopian tube or right fallopian tube. At the same time, due to entry of more calcium ions into the sperm, the sperm will begin whiplash movements. Before undulating movements, that is wave-like movements was there, but now whiplashing movements are there. And all inhibitory substances which are present in the semen will be neutralized here. Okay, so that you have to notice the capacitation. In the capacitation, cholesterol membrane will be dissolved, receptors will expose, that will receive the signals from the ovum, and calcium ions will enter into the sperm. So what will happen? The undulating movements will become whiplashing movements. So it will move very fast in the female genital tract. Before that only, already declotting will be done. Okay, so you are all there. Next, all inhibitory peptides are neutralized here. Now the sperm will move towards the ovum. So after capacitation, sperm will get address of the ovum only. But why should the sperm move towards the ovum? Because some chemicals which are present on sperm and ovum are responsible for this type of attraction, which is known as chemotaxis. Chemotaxis. And along that, fertilizin and anti-fertilizin, fertilizin and anti-fertilizin are the gametes, are the hormones that are present on the surface of sperm and ovum are gametes. The male gamete is andromone, the female gamete is gynomone. On the ovum, fertilizin is present. On the sperm, anti-fertilizin is present. So whenever the anti-fertilizin and fertilizin are same species will fuse, then only fertilization will be allowed. Otherwise, there will be no chances. So this fertilizin and anti-fertilizin are species specific. The sperm of one species will fertilize the ovum of same species only, not with any other species. Some exemptions are there. Sometimes closely related species also takes place. Okay, right? There is a chemo attraction, chemotaxis, chemical attraction. After that, what will happen is acrosome reaction. So whenever the sperm will come in contact with the corona radiator, actually sperm have to come in contact with the secondary oocyte, but there are two walls, two barriers, corona radiator and zona pellucida. So whenever the sperm will reach the corona radiator, immediately the acrosome will burst and releases some hydrolytic and proteolytic enzymes. In that, the first hydrolytic enzyme, hyaluronidase, corona penetrating enzyme, both are essential for the dissolving of corona radiator. And after that, zonalizin or acrosin will help to make pores in the zona pellucida. So then the sperm will enter into the perivitral space. Perivitral space. After sperm entry into the perivitral space, more than one sperm may enter into perivitral space. Immediately, the zona pellucida will reform again by the calcium ions. Right? Next, whenever the sperm will come in contact with the secondary oocyte will complete meiosis II. That leads to formation of a large rooted and second polar body. Okay, polar bodies will be degenerated soon due to lack of sufficient cytoplasm, that is nourishment. So there is no chances to the survival of that. Right? Wood it will modify into ovum. That is what? Acrosome reaction. Right? Next, after that, what will happen? There is formation of fertilization cone at animal pole. Through this fertilization cone, the sperm will enter. First, the plasma membranes of sperm and ovum will be fuses. Later, the nucleus of sperm along with the proximal centriole will enter into the cytoplasm of the ovum. Okay, cytoplasm of the ovum. Only one sperm will fuses with the ovum. It is the monospermy. Polyspermy is completely prevented in human being. Okay, how the polyspermy will be prevented? If the nucleus of one sperm will enter into the cytoplasm of the ovum, immediately the cortical granules will form a thick membrane around this ovum, that is fertilization membrane. The sperm cannot able to penetrate the fertilization membrane. Because of that, only one sperm will fuses with the ovum. Then the pronuclei of the sperm and ovum will fuses. Then the diploid state will be begin there. So haploid chromosomes from the sperm and haploid set of chromosomes from the ovum both will be fused. That leads to formation of a diploid cell. That is the zygote, right? So polyspermy also present in some of the organisms. Okay, for example, if you observe in the fishes, amphibians, and man are mammalians. In the fishes, amphibians, and mammalians, monospermy is the character. Whereas in birds and reptiles, polyspermy is there. So many sperms will fuse with the ovum, but only one nucleus is finally successfully fused. Remaining all will be dissolved. That is physiological polyspermy present in the birds and reptiles. That also you have to remember. So fertilization is completed. After fertilization, what will happen? After fertilization. So the result of fertilization is formation of zygote or synkaryon. Later, this zygote will begin mitotic divisions, which are known as cleavages. Okay, the repeated mitotic divisions which takes place in the zygote that will convert unicellular zygote into multicellular embryo is known as cleavages. So in human embryo, holoblastic cleavages takes place. Holoblastic and indeterminate cleavages. Holoblastic and indeterminate cleavages takes place. So first cleavage will begin after 30 hours of fertilization. That leads to formation of two blastomeres. After 20 hours of that, the second cleavage. After 3 days, the third cleavage will be completed. Finally, there will be formation of 8 to 32 blastomeres. That stage of embryo is known as morula because it appears like a mulberry fruit, right? But the size of zygote and size of morula is same because around the morula zona pellucida is there. Because of that, there is no chance for the increase in the size. But the number of cells will increases. Cytoplasm quantity is same, but genetic material will increases. That you have to remember. See, there is no growth phase in the cleavages. What is the main difference between normal mitotic division and the cleavage divisions? In the cleavage, growth phase is absent, but there, in the normal mitotic division, there are two growth phases, G1 phase and G2 phase. But here, G1, G2 phases are not there. There is no growth in the size, right? It is very rapid. It will take very fast. That will take more time. That you have to notice. Here only the quantity of genetic material increases, but cytoplasmic concentration is same. But there, cytoplasmic concentration also increases in the normal mitotic divisions. What are the differences in this cleavage and normal mitotic divisions? Right. After that, after formation of morula, blastocyst will form. Okay, the cells of morula will undergo cleavages again, and whenever there is formation of more blastomeres, that will arrange into regions. Some blastomers will move towards the peripheral region and that will form a membrane which is known as trophoblast, and remaining cells inside the trophoblast are known as inner cell mass or embryonic cell mass. Inner cell mass will develop as a embryo in future, and the trophoblast is a protective layer and it is essential for the implantation, and also it is essential for the formation of extra embryonic layer which are essential for the providing of all requirements to the embryo from implantation to placentation up to formation of a placenta. So along with the formation of morula, that morula will move towards the uterus. By the ending of third day, it will reach the uterus and it will modify into blastocyst. By the ending of 7th day, this blastocyst will attach to the endometrium of the uterus, which is known as implantation. And trophoblast layer. One thing you should notice: trophoblast is the sticky layer. But before there was zona pellucida. Whenever it will stay in the uterus due to secretions of the uterus, zona pellucida will be dissolved. Then only the trophoblast layer will attach to the endometrium of the uterus, which is known as implantation. And trophoblast layer secretes some hydrolytic enzymes, histolytic enzymes. That histolytic enzymes will digest the tissue in the endometrium. That leads to formation of a pit in the endometrium. Then blastocyst will be buried in the endometrium. That leads to modification of endometrium, which is known as decidua. There are three regions in the decidua: decidua basalis, decidua capsularis, and decidua parietalis. Already we discussed about that also, right? And after implantation, what will happen? After implantation, implantation of blastocyst will transform into gastrula. The transformation of blastocyst into gastrula with 3 germ layers is known as gastrulation. Actually, gastrulation means movement or migration. How the gastrulation takes place? How the 3 germ layers are formed in the gastrula? By the rearrangement of blastomeres into their respective layers. or by the migration of blastomeres into their respective locations, there is formation of 3 cell layers. So first, the blastomers are arranged in 2 rows, epiblast and hypoblast. Later, there is formation of primitive streak on the dorsal side of epiblast in posterior anterior direction. Then the cells of epiblast will inwardly migrate into in between epiblast and hypoblast, right? This type of movement is known as invaginations. So due to this invaginations, the cells of epiblast will migrate in between epiblast and hypoblast. This newly migrated cells, along with all cells of hypoblast and some newly migrated epiblast cells will form endoderm, and remaining migrated cells will form, sorry, not endoderm, it is endoderm. After that, mesoderm. After that, the epiblast cells will form ectoderm. So 3 layers will form: ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. So this type of movements in the during the process of gastrulation will give a particular form to the embryo. Because of that, these are known as morphogenetic movements. And also along with that, there is formation of extra embryonic layers. After this, 4 extra embryonic layers are formed: chorion, amnion, yolk sac, and allantois. Chorion is the outermost and largest extra embryonic layer that will cover all other extra embryonic layers along with embryo. So on the surface of chorionic villi arises. This chorionic villi deeply penetrates into the endometrium of the uterus. That leads to breakage of endometrial tissue. So the chorionic villi has a direct contact with the blood of. The chorionic villi has a direct contact with the blood of mother, maternal blood. So this type of chorion is known as hemochorion, right? So these chorionic villi are essential for the exchange of materials between the fetus and mother. Okay, so blood of mother is around the chorionic villi or direct contact with the chorionic villi. So whenever the blood of mother is around the chorionic villi, based on the concentrated gradient, the diffusion of materials takes place between them. So these are essential for the nourishment, respiration, excretion. Okay, right? That you should notice. This chorionic villi will later modifies into fetal part of placenta. Fetal part of placenta might be by the ending of 3rd month of pregnancy. This chorionic villi will form the fetal part of placenta, right? And after that, amnion. And one more thing you should remember here: formation of extra embryonic mesoderm. Already I gave you. Trophoblast cells will form extra embryonic mesoderm, which will split and leads to formation of extra embryonic coelom. The inner layer is known as splanchnopluric extra embryonic mesoderm or visceral extra embryonic mesoderm, and outer is parietal extra embryonic mesoderm, or it is somatopluric extra embryonic mesoderm. See, in the chorion has trophoblast outside, somatopluric extra embryonic mesoderm inside. And next, amnion acts as a fluid helmet around the embryo, not completely around. It covers 3 sides. So amnion has a cavity, amniotic cavity. This amniotic cavity is filled with amniotic fluid. That amniotic fluid is essential for the maintenance of moisture, temperature, and also it acts as a barrier, and it prevents the desiccation of the embryos. Okay, it is the extra embryonic layer which will remain throughout the pregnancy, and at last, at the time of labor pains during the parturition, this amnion will be ruptured and amniotic fluid will be sent out before the parturition. And amniotic fluid will be collected to test the gender of embryo. That is amniocentesis. We will discuss that in next chapter. That is reproductive health, right? Is it clear? And amnion is internally covered by trophoblast layer, externally somatopluric extra embryonic mesoderm. Yolk sac, it is actually a vestigial, but it play only one function. That is, it acts as an organ of production of blood cells for the first time. So the first hemopoietic organ in the body of human being is yolk sac. But in other animals, yolk sac stores the yolk during the embryonic development. In this yolk sac, endometrium located inside, and outside splanchnopluric extra embryonic mesoderm. And allantois is also non-functional, but the blood vessels of allantois serves as a blood vessels for the formation of placenta and also umbilical cord, right? In this allantois also internally endometrium and externally mesoderm, that is the splanchnopluric extraembryonic mesoderm are present. It acts as an embryonic kidney in other animals because it stores the nitrogenous base. That are the 4 extra embryonic layers, right? Is it clear? Next, after completion of that extra embryonic layer formation, placenta, extra embryonic layers are formed. Gastrulation also done. So next organogenesis will begin here in the gastrula. So the 3 germ layers will start production of different organs and organ systems, which is known as organogenesis. The fate of ectoderm, the fate of endoderm, the fate of mesoderm we discussed already. See, for example, the organs which are near the surface of the body are mainly developed from the ectoderm. For example, you will see the skin, the nails, hair, eyebrows, eyelids, okay, even ears, mouth, lips, here nervous system, okay, all that are developed from mainly ectoderm, right? Right. Next, mesoderm, for example, majority of the systems in our body, circulatory system, respiratory system, gonads of the reproductive system, okay, muscular system, skeletal system, all that are developed from the mesoderm because connective tissues are mesodermal in origin. Majority of the organs and organ systems are developed from the connective tissues. Endodermal, for example, digestive system, major glands like the liver, pancreas, spleen, respiratory system like our lungs, all are endodermal in origin, right? So that's clear about this. Still, some more is there. Actually, I tried to complete the total chapter in this class, but it is not possible. So, still we have to discuss about placenta formation, gestation, pregnancy, parturition, and lactation. It will take 15 to 20 minutes. In next class, we will complete that. If you have any doubts, today only you should ask. Okay. Tomorrow onwards, we'll start a new chapter. Thank you.